Evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are Sisters Against the System, and tonight on our show, I'd like you to welcome J.D. Rutherford. J.D. Rutherford is an author that has just come out with a marvelous book. Now, he has a group called Stand for Something Life, and his new book is entitled An Imprisoned Mind, A Guide to Escaping Our Self-Made Prison. Now, what this is actually about, I understand, JD, and especially after glancing through this book, is this is about a new way of thinking, a way out of the criminal thinking. Can you tell us about it?
Yes, absolutely, Melissa. And thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate. Yes, I really appreciate the time to be able to talk to all of you and speak directly to you in regards to the Stand for Something Life program and the Stand for Something way of life, as we call it. And our motto is lead by example, stand proud, lead by example, stand proud, stand tall, stand for something. And what it is an imprisoned mind, a guide to escaping our self-made prison, is the very foundation for Stand for Something Life. It is the very blueprint for success for anybody that's looking to take that journey towards reinventing themselves and to bettering themselves by learning this cognitive thinking skill that most of us had kind of missed the mark on in our life. We got so caught up in the social mirror of our lives, and we were so dominated, controlled by what's called external stressors that create this departure from rational thinking. In other words, we have allowed other people to program our thinking as opposed to us becoming objective and free thinking and experiencing the world through our own eyes. We're doing it through the eyes of others. So An Imprisoned Mind, A Guide to Escaping Our Self-Made Prison is a fresh new approach to defeating that incarcerated state of mind that not only people that were incarcerated in a prison system, but anybody that is stuck in any kind of a bad marriage, bad job, ineffective way of communicating, not being assertive, very low on the scale of emotional intelligence, your ability to actively listen to somebody and to reason with somebody and to cope with life's ups and downs. So this book right here will put you on the fast track towards reclaiming your individuality and to become a more effective free thinker and objective personality, and your emotional intelligence will grow as a result of it.
So one thing that occurred to me when I was reading through your book is that this new thinking is excellent for recovering addicts and alcoholics as well.
Absolutely. I stand behind it 100% because drugs and alcohol were a part of my life for a very long time. Well, while I don't really say that the drugs and the alcohol are the root cause of all my problems, I mean, that just wouldn't be rational or logical to even think that, because the drugs and alcohol are always the symptom to some problem that is greater and that is deeper that's going on within ourselves. So,
yes.
And not only that, but some people, choose an unconventional addiction in order to kind of like self-medicate. Some people overeat. Some people become, addicted to sexual encounters. Some people become addicted to crime and the streets and money and gambling and all sorts of different hang-ups in order to kind of mask this pain and this external struggle this internal struggle that they have within themselves, and their inability to cope with what's going on. So they turn to these outlets as a means of escaping it. And a lot of times drugs and alcohol is an escape. And for me, a criminal way of life and the streets and gangs and all that stuff was my main driving force towards not being able to rationalize or cope rationally with what was going on inside of me, and drugs and alcohol were also added to it as more therapy to kind of escape what's already going on inside of me, what I'm already externalizing.
Yes. Now, do you see this new way of thinking is catching on? It occurs to me this should actually be a nationwide thing, especially with all of the juvenile problems we're having and everything else. Do you see anybody else that's working with people using this new method of thinking?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, something that I feel is very exciting, and something that I had a chance to experience today was I was contacted several days ago by my probation officer, this United States Probation Department in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Contacted me several days ago and told me that they're doing training exercises for their probation officers dealing with cognitive thinking. And they wanted to know if I wanted to come on and assist them with this training program. And I thought, well, that sounds interesting, because here's all the things that I'm talking about, and here's all the things that I'm advocating for as far as prison reform is concerned. And I agreed, and I couldn't wait to do it. And this morning I woke up bright and early. I went down to the U.S. Probation Office in downtown Oklahoma City. I mean, the roads were icy. It was freezing cold out there, but I still went, because that's how important. Yeah, that's how important this is to me. Yeah. And that's how much I feel that it is crucial to become a part of that. And if law enforcement and the courts are starting to get on board with this, well, then I'm going to be there with them to assist them and to be a part of it. So in doing these training exercises with these probation officers, I was very impressed on how much this material is actually helping them in the way they think and in the way they approach things. Because a lot of us were used to the overzealous probation or parole officers that, he's kind of a hard ass, kind of all up in your business. He's all on your bumper. You feel like you can't get ahead because these people are holding you back. Well, while in the federal system right now, there's all these reforms that are taking place on all levels. We're not talking just in criminal justice reform and dealing with, changing the mindset of people that are in the system, but people that actually work in the system as well, all the way down the line, from BOP staff to probation officers to court clerks, to all of them are using this cognitive thinking model so that they can effectively communicate with their caseload. And it was interesting to see just how much they were all on the same page. Like, they were all in perfect, cohesion with each other on how they were approaching this and how objective they were being. Because, I wasn't making it easy for them. I was kind of like we were role-playing. So I was the person on supervision, and I gave them some of the hardest examples, that they could face as far as somebody being on their caseload. The person that doesn't want to hear it, the person that's cut off, the person that's shut down, the one that doesn't trust them, the one that's blaming everybody. A lot of people that are on probation do these things because I did them. And because I have so much experience with the system as being a parolee and being a probationer, I know exactly what I could throw at them and to see if I can frustrate them or to trigger their, push their buttons so that they jump back into this irrational countermeasure or this irrational response that I'm used to them having. And this wasn't happening with them. They were using all of the tools that an imprisoned mind teaches and Stand for Something Life is all about, cognitive behavioral tricks and techniques and tools to effectively communicate with the person they're trying to communicate, to actively listen to what they're saying, to provide some kind of solutions, to help reason with the person as far as seeing how their rational thinking has been compromised and how the consequences of their actions could lead to a greater and more loss of freedom and greater destructive consequences that can mean losing your job, losing your family, and being back incarcerated.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I know you don't want to give away too much, but let's say that I am a mother with a child in elementary school who is already getting those paper referrals to the juvenile justice system. Is this something that I can implement into my young child's life as a parent?
Absolutely. One of the long-term goals of Stand for Something Life is to take the world by storm with this cognitive thinking model. Because, I mean, let's face it, we see it in the world around us. We see it with a lot of younger people that have somehow not really received the benefit of individual thought or free thinking or strong emotional intelligence. You know, for
JD, doesn't it also have something to do with a lack of self-esteem and self-confidence from the triggers around us? It can even be as close as your own mother or father that damaged you into thinking you were worthless, right?
Exactly. There are several different factors, and you know, being that I'm a Generation Xer, and I see a lot of what the outcome from a lot of this stuff, because you started to see it growing in the 80s and in the 90s, and now, you know, you have a lot of millennials at the next level that are displaying a lot of character traits and ways of thinking that have been shaped by, you know, my generation in not such a real positive way, because you got a lot of people that are very entitled to everything. You know, an immediate gratification is so much prevalent right now in our modern society that everybody thinks that they have something coming and that they demand everybody's respect. And a lot of people in my generation are you know, bandwagoning this as well. It's what we like to call the herd mentality or the hive mind, the social mirror, the external stressors, and everybody externally stresses the next person into thinking this way. And what's happened is I think that in general, as far as bringing up our children in life, what we have done is we've allowed the world to do more programming of our children than we actually have. And our schools have actually really dropped the ball, because in a lot of ways their hands are tied on how they can approach certain things, because you have so many hot topics, you have so many sensitive issues that people are just scared to go anywhere near. And a lot of that needs to be torn down. You know, it needs to be done away with, because it's not doing any good as far as developing emotional intelligence, challenging people's entitled thinking to their immediate gratification, and in a sense, the ego is becoming so powerful in today's world that you can't even rationalize with the next person anymore. So what needs to happen is this cognitive thinking needs to be incorporated into our education system 100%. It needs to be there as much as science, math, reading, English, all that stuff. It needs to be in there. It needs to be started at an early age. It needs to be taught in the family home. I even would go so far as to be kind of like an activist, or what you would say, and if you're going to have children, to say that you have to learn this cognitive thinking in order to effectively raise your children. I mean, you call me, I guess you can call me a fundamentalist when it comes to this stuff. Fundamentalist for rational thinking and powerful cognitive thinking, because it's all of us that are contributing to this, and we can't change nothing until we actually start to address our own deficit in cognitive thinking and cognitive behavior.
Yes, and I would like to point out, JD, that this ego thing, this entitlement we're seeing from the younger generation these days, where, the world essentially owes them a living. This is not real self-esteem. This is not self-confidence. An egotistical person is never self-confident, are they?
Absolutely not.
No, right. No, that's not what we're talking about when we say, to me, real self-esteem is knowing who you are and what you're made of and liking yourself. Because you're not a bad person, as you have been perhaps taught to believe. I went through something similar in my life when I quit drinking. And it was such a challenge for me, JD, because I really did not think I could get through the day without it, but I couldn't tell you why. And one day I read a bumper sticker that said, alcohol is never the problem, it's the solution. And I started thinking about this, and I realized, well, yes, what would I be like without the alcohol? What's there? That's got to be what I'm running from. And most of it was going through my childhood and realizing that I was raised not to have self-esteem. I had a mother that would purposely just knock it out of me every time I got some. She would take it away. It was a mean, crazy, vicious game. But she was not the only parent that was subconsciously doing this. There's a lot of that. And I think that we grew up to accidentally do the same thing with our own children. And so if I had had access to this information in elementary school, my whole life would have been different and much better. How about yours?
Yeah, absolutely.
I certainly understand it was not your mother that took away your self-esteem, but for whatever reason, if this had been presented in our younger days, I think we all would have been better off.
Absolutely, and you can even go so far as to say a lot of bullying. When kids are bullied in school, and we live in a day and age where so many people demand tolerance and demand that they be looked at one way or the other, and at the same time, bullying is just as bad, if not worse, than it was before.
These bullies don't have self-confidence or self-esteem either, or they wouldn't be bullying.
Exactly, and that's why I'm saying that bullying in the schools have been all but ignored for so long, because a lot of people are like, well, let kids be kids, and that's kind of like a really simple explain away, and that's kind of like passing the buck off to somebody else later on in life. Well, this is somebody else's problem. This is the criminal justice's problem. When these kids grow up, they can go to one of our many fine prisons and become a slave on the 13th Amendment clause plantation, and we don't have to deal with it anymore. Our hands are tied. We don't get paid enough to care, and that's the thing, is like a lot of educators and the education system they're so underpaid and they're so underappreciated that a lot of their thinking becomes jaded, and they don't want to add anything new, and they don't want to reinvent the wheel. They just want to push the academics through, push these kids through their classes, and push them on to the next level, wherever they go. If they go on to the universities or the colleges, or if they go on to the penitentiary plantations, wherever it is that they turn up next is not my problem any longer. I've washed my hands of them the minute the school year is over. And a lot of that needs to change, because when we live in a day and age now where we have a lot of school shootings and we have a lot of school violence. And this is nothing new. I mean, when I was a kid in the 90s and the 80s, school violence was gang violence and with stabbings and stuff. You didn't really have mass school shootings. But nowadays, it's like what is the real problem? Why are these school shootings occurring? Is it really the fault of the National Rifle Association? Is it really the gun's fault? Or is it that these kids have become exposed to so much information on the web that they now know that, through video games and through various different other external stressors, that I may not be strong enough to fight my bully physically, but by God, I sure can get a gun and take care of them that way. And next thing you know, we're all rallying behind this call to eliminate guns from our society when really it's not the guns, because guns have been here since the 1500s. Why is it now that there's something else going on here? And it's everybody's unwillingness to take a look at this whole bullying that's going on, this cyberbullying, this school bullying in the community, and refusing to address it. And they want to attack everything else but the problem. It's kind of like, you have a cut on your arm, so you cut your whole arm off. And instead of putting a Band-Aid on it or putting some stitches on it, it doesn't make any sense. So what it is it's because so many people lack these cognitive skills, this cognitive thinking model that we're pushing so hard right now, and that people are finally starting to catch on, and it's really starting to pick up steam, and it's picking up speed, because people are starting to realize now that in every aspect of our life, whether it be societal reform, and you hear me talk a lot about Stand for Something Life, is not only about criminal justice reform, we're about societal reform. And I don't really deal with the conditions of the prison system, because prison's a horrible place. I've been in it for many, many times, many years, and it's not meant to be sandals. It's not Club Med.
No,
it's a prison. And I don't really so much deal with those issues, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make people understand and realize you see how horrible it is. You know how terrible it is in there. How did you feel when you were in there? Why would you ever want to go back to that again? So here's where cognitive thinking is important. Here's where real criminal justice reform actually has a chance to take hold, by teaching people that your current conditions, your environment for which you live in, can be corrected by you taking the first step towards changing that. You stand at the foot of the crossroads, and your journey lies ahead of you. And in order to change your conditions, you have to change your thinking. And as far as prison conditions are concerned, the system is running the way it was designed to run, and a lot of people don't realize that. It's because of the 13th Amendment clause that says that people that are become felons are now slaves. There's a lot of area inside of there that's like really dark area that a lot of people don't understand, and a lot of reform can't happen because there's aspects of our own Constitution that prevent that. So they could pay a lot of lip service and tell you they're going to do this and they're going to do that, but in reality, the circumstances and the environment of it doesn't change because of the way the law is written. And in order to completely change that, the law needs to be kind of like updated and changed, and language needs to be put into place that says, okay, prison is actually a place that we are trying to correct bad behavior. Rehabilitation means that you restore somebody to a previous state. Rehabilitation doesn't mean lock them in a cell, give them diesel therapy, starve them half to death, mess with their mail, force them to work, and if they don't work, they get all this punishment and stuff like that. Prison is a place where it must become therapeutic. There must be a therapeutic component to it in order to help people to see the error of their ways instead of making them worse than they were when they went in.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, because I think one of the biggest problems is that kids today do not have conflict resolution skills. They are unable to solve their own problems. They truly have no idea that it is within their power to do so.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's anytime you try to. I mean, let's take social media for example. Somebody somebody posts a comment about something that they feel strongly about. Now, this could be religion, it could be politics, it could be an experience they had at work or an experience they had at the line at the supermarket. Somebody leaves a comment that's not positive to them. That doesn't. In other words, it doesn't like agree with them. Mm-hmm. Immediately, people will go on the attack. Immediately, people will start accusing you of being all kinds of this and all kinds of that, and you're a horrible person, and next thing you know, you're getting blocked, and you're getting reported to, like, Facebook jail, and all these things are happening to you, and you're like, wow, all I simply said is I just disagreed with them, or I tried to provide a suggestion, and they just blow up into this insane rant of frustration and anger, and that's the lack of conflict resolution, and that just shows you how much people don't have the ability to be objective. They see everything in an absolute. If you're attacking me, or if you're disagreeing with me, you're attacking me, and that's the irrational thought. Is everybody feels attacked if somebody tries to give them any kind of suggestion. I don't even know why people even bother to even talk. If they're looking just for, positive affirmation and somebody to agree with them all the time, I mean, that's not even realistic to think that way. Because in part of our experience of life and moving forward, we have to be willing to be receptive to what is given to us. Somebody is taking time out of their day to provide us with a suggestion or to comment on something that we're thinking, and there might be something that's within our blind pane of our own window, and that blind pane doesn't allow us to see where our thinking is wrong or inaccurate, and somebody comes along and adds to that or tries to give a suggestion. It's imperative that we don't automatically go on the attack and assassinating that person's character and who that person is as a whole, but by asking, and being grateful, thank you for your feedback, and how is it that I can correct this? What steps can I take the next time that this happens, or how can I move away from this thinking that really doesn't benefit me? Because any negative thought about anything that's going on in your life is an unproductive thought. It doesn't lead towards bettering your life. It actually brings you down. It's like a cancer, and it continues to spread further and further throughout you until you become this ultra angry person that just goes through their life in day trying to find something to be offended by.
Yes. Misery loves company. But that is an important thing, JD, is that when people are happy with themselves and generally feeling all right about things, they do not go around trying to antagonize or stir up trouble. So I'm curious, you mentioned the change in the probation department in Oklahoma. Are they doing this work with the juveniles or just adults so far?
Excuse me. I'm seeing it with the adults. However, I would be willing to guess that they're doing this with the juveniles, or that they will be starting to do this with the juveniles. I actually did ask that question, and as you know, the federal criminal justice system doesn't really deal with a lot of juveniles. I mean, it does, but it not at the level that the county and state does. Yeah. So I do think that there is this push towards using this in the juvenile justice system, and I think that it is something that is in the works in many different justice departments, as far as trying to find something that works. And we've gone through many decades and years of doing everything that does not work. And now I think that they're finally on to the right track as far as doing something that does work. Because everybody knows, right? Yeah, everybody knows that, regardless of what any tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist might think, nobody wants to see their society completely fall apart. It just doesn't make any sense for anybody to think that. What we have is what's called human error. And where you have human error, everybody is exposed to it. You don't have these people that they're sworn into the duty and they're given a badge, and all of a sudden their whole thinking is different, and their whole thought process is different. They may play by a different set of rules. They may go through life differently, and they may see life differently. But in essence, they experience the same irrationality, the same lack of being objective, poor emotional intelligence, power thrusting, power orientating on other people, cutting people off. They have all the same human emotions that the rest of us have. And now I think what's happening is with all of what's going on in the world, with police shootings, with prison riots, with prison beatings, a mental health system that's out of control, a substance abuse problem that's out of control, is people are finally now demanding that their system works for them, but they don't really know how to get this going. They don't really know what it is, and that's why it is very important for Stand for Something Life, myself, and everybody that's a part of the Stand for Something Life family, to continue to push this and get this out there, and to become more cohesive and united with other groups and with other organizations that are looking at reform and are looking at real working solutions to recreate society and make it work on all cylinders. And that's why it's very important for this message to get out there, because I'm just one person that's screaming for reform, and I'm one person that's campaigning for this cognitive thinking model, and I'm educating others on how important and valuable it is for all of us. Because if it's changed my life, a lifelong criminal, gang member, drug dealer, bank robber, you name it, if it can help me and it can help all of these probation officers that deal with people like myself, then it can help anybody. It's our thinking that ultimately creates our environment, good or bad.
Well, yes, JD. As a matter of fact, you are quite an accomplished adult. People may not know this, but you are the author of 2 books that I know of. Are there more, or just 2?
I'm actually I'm working on a 3rd book right now as we speak. It's called The Laughing Boy. And
congratulations.
Right, thank you. This book is dealing with my life as a 14-year-old child who was running away from home and living with squatters and being actually kidnapped by some really horrible, disgusting people and being physically, emotionally, and sexually abused, and all the trials and tribulations I felt, I experienced in captivity, and how that turned into a PTSD like state of mind, and
yes, I imagine so. That is quite traumatic.
Right. And it pushed me into
a very traumatic childhood, in fact, JD.
Yeah,
you and I have shared this.
Right, and for me, it's all about righting the wrongs of my own thinking, because regardless of what happened to me, and I used to think that it's all of the experience's fault. All these factors in society, it's all their fault. It's the people that harm me. It's their fault that I did. in reality, I chose to react the way I did. Now, it's not my fault as a child that I was exposed to all this abuse, because it's never the child's fault. However, the system that was in place at the time was much different than it is today. So
yes,
the system had a hand in creating this state of mind for me, but it wasn't the only thing. I mean, I could have sought out a lot of different counseling. I could have dealt with it differently than I did, but I mean, once you read this book, you'll understand why and how I got into this world that I got into. But the main thing is despite all of this abuse and everything that I experienced, and this is some of the most traumatic stuff that any child could have experienced, this cognitive model worked. And it worked where medication couldn't work. I mean, I tried that one time where I had a nervous breakdown. I had an emotional breakdown into almost like an episode of schizophrenia and depression. And the system was throwing all these pills at me. They were throwing Zyprexa at me, Boospar, Thorazine, all these different things. They were piling on me. Wellbutrin, Paxil, Zoloft, all these different things. And
to be honest, JD, a person cannot function at a normal, well-lived life on that medicine, can they?
No, I mean, they put me on all these medicines, and I started effects, all these physical changes within my body. My hair completely fell out in one spot on my head. Like, I have a bald spot on my head from a side effect from one of the medications. I have a bald spot. I ended up developing like this huge belly that was hurting my back. A lot of like various different bowel problems and urinary problems. Mm-hmm. And it just didn't feel like, I felt like I was constantly, all I wanted to do was sleep and eat. And
yeah,
I didn't see how that benefited me. Yeah, I mean,
I had two friends once that were sisters, and one was very, very skinny, and the other one was obese. Now, the one that was obese was on a lot of psychotropic medication most of her life. And just the difference in the two sisters was actually pretty scary, seeing what that medicine did to the one sister. You know, with the weight gain, and as you mentioned, she was always tired.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong. You know, I don't want people to get upset and think that I'm attacking medication for psychological issues, because there are a lot of people that really do need them. You know, I'm well aware of that. However, I do believe that most people can overcome their emotional and psychological problems through learning how to reason and learning how to cope with their post-traumatic stress, with their departure from rational thought. It's as simple as taking that first step and understanding that there is a problem, that something needs to change. And right.
Well, I think it's important wherever we can in our society to implement a change of thinking as opposed to medication. Now, my son is 32, and I know when he was being raised in the 80s and 90s, which is pretty much when you were raised, correct, JD?
Yes.
Okay. The thinking back then in the schools was very much towards the medicine. They really did push kids to get medicated. Many of us ended up in the doctor's office at the teacher's insistence, and I just had a very miserable feeling about this the whole time, because I just knew this was not going to work. And so as a society, of such drug-addicted people, we really need to start thinking about how we can change a child's thinking so they don't turn to the drugs. Because in today's world, I think it's safe to say that everybody growing up is going to need help developing their self-esteem. And most of the adults alive today need help too. It's not something as a nation that we were really taught to focus on with our children. The emphasis was placed on discipline and doing it in a non-abusive way, but they really didn't give us the tools to teach a positive method of thinking, as your book does, J.D. And I want to say this again. I really think that every mother out there that is having a problem with your child and their self-esteem or problems at school, problem with friends, get a copy of this book. It is called An Imprisoned Mind, a guide to, help me here, JD, my glasses are off.
An Imprisoned Mind, a guide to escaping our self-made prison.
Yes. Now, this book is available at Amazon, am I right?
Yes, Amazon, Kindle, and Kindle Unlimited. So you can also get it on an ebook.
Yes, very good. And I strongly recommend anybody out there that's playing around with your children, don't waste any time. Get a copy of this book. If this were available when my son were in elementary school, we would have had much different results with him. And I'm sure you agree with that, JD. If you can get this new method of thinking instilled into a child, wow, that's the best way, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very important that we start becoming actively involved in the raising of our children, and that's not entirely the fault of the parent, because we live in a day and age, and this has been going on for a long time, where the cost of living is so high and pay is so menial, and you got both parents working and sometimes working long hours and long work weeks, and there should probably be a whole new way of looking, a fresh approach and taking a look at employment in this country and how it's actually tearing down the family system. Why is it that both parents need to have to go to work? Why is it that people work so many long hours and long work weeks for such a small paycheck at the end of the week? It's and that we start getting into like income tax. I never did understand why income tax is even a thing when everything else is taxed. I mean, everything that you buy, from gas to a candy bar at the gas station, is taxed. And if every single item in this country is taxed, then why is this? Why should income be taxed? If income wasn't taxed, people would have a little more flexibility. And if work weeks were limited down to, like, let's say people worked, I don't know, maybe 12 or 3 12-hour shifts a week, or 4 10-hour shifts a week, as opposed to 5, and then have 3 days off, right, or 4 days off.
40-hour work week, as it used to be in the good old days.
Right,
as a country, we've made it all about the money. Families, you're right, JD, they're spending too much time worried about how are we going to make ends meet. What we really need to do, and it's very hard, is to kind of let those bills go and spend time with our children. I think just actually, somebody was pointing out to me, if you have a good guide such as your book, it really only takes a little bit each day. If you just work with your child a little bit each day, do you agree with this?
Absolutely. It's understanding that you have a responsibility. The minute you take on the role as a parent, your responsibility is to raising that child to become productive. and to become the best that they can be. If we fail these children, then what happens is we bear some of the blame and the burden of what happens later on in their lives. If they end up in prison, or if they end up, strung out on drugs, or an inability to achieve their goals because they don't have the ability to set any kind of goals. They don't have that built-in way of coping with not accomplishing something, or rejection, or defeat, or they don't have, they lack the basic skills to deal with these things. So what has to happen is people need to become more involved in the raising of their children, and people need to start demanding more, a better system and system that actually encourages them to do that. Like more paid leave in employment. Reducing the amount of days that a person has to work back to back. Giving people more free time. One of the biggest important I'd like to say diagram of Stand for Something Life and the cognitive model itself is what's called the lifestyle balance wheel. And your lifestyle balance wheel is it incorporates all the things that you do in your life, and you balance it out. You got work, you got community involvement, leisure time, time spent with family, time to spend on your hobbies and your projects and different things. And most people, their wheel is off balance because it's like 90% work and 10% of just recovering from working. Like sitting there and just like, I'm just too drained and have no energy to do anything else except sit here or sleep or watch TV or do something like that. And meanwhile, everything else is like falling apart around them. So, and the kids are affected by this the most, because you deal with a lot of children that sometimes you have single parents, and that puts even a greater degree of disadvantage on the child, because now there's only one parent, and that parent works all the time just to keep the roof over their head.
Absolutely.
Right. So it would, there needs to be a lot of work done in all these different areas. And I believe that I'm very optimistic and positive about the direction that a lot of us are taking, but it's still a work in progress, because so many people are still caught up in this thinking of blaming others or kicking people while they're down and trying to climb the ladder at everybody else's expense, and this rat race that most of us are running in, that we lose sight of what's really important in life. And that's the progression and the well-being of each and every one of us. Because, in a marriage, a happy wife is a happy life for the man, and a happy husband is a happy wife for the woman. And children are only as happy as their parents, and they're only as functional as their parents are. And if my neighbors are also prosperous and happy and functioning on a positive level around me, then that creates a better environment for myself. The negative energy is reduced a lot more, to where I can actually walk down the street and have a conversation with somebody that's a lot more positive than listening to them complain about the next person.
Yes, it kind of reverberates throughout the community. And the most important thing that I came to realize about 2.5 years ago is that until you change this method of thinking that we've all used, that has gotten our lives into a lot of trouble, before you deal with the stuff that's bothering you on the inside, you really are destined to fail, because that's what it is. It is a recipe to fail. And to me, nothing was as wonderful as the morning I woke up and started thinking about something. I don't recall what it was, but I realized that morning, oh my goodness, I'm starting to like myself. And it was just such a realization. It really just blew me out of the water. I was in shock. I was overjoyed. And I realized I did this work all by myself. And when you get to that place and the changes that come immediately afterwards, I just remember a whole bunch of happiness. Just really, just feeling very relieved and very happy, like, okay, I have a clearer picture of who I am, and they were wrong. They lied to me. And you feel empowered by this. It's marvelous. Do you remember when you got to that point? Because for me, it was very recent. As I said, 2.5 years ago. But I'll never forget that. That was probably one of the best mornings in my life. I was just absolutely in shock, but a good shock.
Yeah, that's that paradigm shift. You know, you left this how you used to see yourself in the world, and like I said, it was that departure from rational thought. It was all these external stressors and people in your life that had led you to think this way about yourself, and to have a low self-esteem, and to not really love yourself. And it's not selfish to love yourself. I tell a lot of people, right, I tell a lot of people that are...
I think we're kind of raised to believe, well, if you think too highly of yourself, then you've got problems. And really, it's the thinking low about yourself that makes you come off as thinking too much of yourself. But there's a huge difference between being arrogant and narcissistic to having self-confidence and liking oneself. And that's fine. That's good. That's the way we're supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes, and I encourage this, like I said, in my book, I encourage people to engage in a self-patting on the back, in this kind of like a gloating over your accomplishments. And I encourage that, and in the eyes of other people, you may seem like conceited or arrogant or egotistical, but who gives a shit? I mean, pardon me.
I know it feels so good. It really does.
Right, who really cares what they think? Because it's not really about them. It's about you. And there's even some times where you need to vent. You need to have what's called this pressure valve that you need to put on yourself, and you need to release it. Because if you've ever seen like an old-fashioned locomotive, and it's going down the tracks, and it's that sound, that toot toot. Yeah. And people think that in a lot of ways that sound is for to signal people that a train's coming. That's partly true, but it's also a pressure valve to release a lot of the steam that's coming out of the engine. And if you don't release the steam, then the engine's just gonna break. And a lot of people are external stuffers. They stuff everything. They're stuffing all of this frustration, this pain, until this pressure builds up and it explodes, and that's when people start lashing out violently. So sometimes you need to vent. Sometimes you need to rant. You need to go on a good rant every now and again. Some people more often than not, and as far as your frustrations and everything are concerned. But it needs to be done in a way where you know that the outcome is going to be healthy for you. Somebody else might not want to hear it, and somebody else may be going, God, this person's bitching about things again. But in a sense, it's really helping you to release pressure, because stuffing doesn't get us nowhere. And now I'm not talking about getting hung up in complaining and bitching about everything that goes on in life around you. You know, like things that have to do with yourself. your part in the world, not the world itself. Like worrying about what somebody's doing 2 cities over, or what some politician's doing, or what this person's doing, or what these people are doing, or what these people have, or what these people don't have. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about releasing the pressure within yourself, your own environment, and what's happening to you, how your experience of life, and how things that are going on in your immediate control are influencing you and affecting you. By releasing that pressure, you're able to continue to stay above having an emotional breakdown, and your emotional intelligence increases that way. And that pressure valve is very important, and I can't touch on that enough.
Yeah, we really do need to have a way to express the things that are disquieting to us. And once again, this is something that should be taught in early childhood. How do you express your anger? How do you properly express your disappointment? And if you are used to just shoving things down, as we've all been taught to do, just ignore it, it'll go away, push it down and move on. And of course, as you and I know, JD, it doesn't work. These things act like a pressure cooker, and eventually it will blow up. It will come out, whether you want it to or not, and usually in the wrong way. This is one good way people end up incarcerated, is by, pushing things down so long. So I quite agree. We need to teach our kids, and as adults, we need to parent ourselves to release that any positive way we can. And by positive way, I mean not hurting or annoying anybody else. I mean, we have to express it appropriately, or go somewhere and vent by ourselves, or, so in a legal manner is what I'm trying to say. So we don't end up hurting anybody else by lashing out, or, God forbid, taking away someone else's self-esteem because we're angry at something they said. So we definitely do need to teach venting. But I am very excited about this book, JD. We are out of time for tonight, but I would like you to come back after you have spent some time with the probation department and kind of, keep us abreast of what's going on with this and how this is working out. And I want to let everybody know again, J.D. Rutherford is the author of this marvelous book. Please pick yourself up a copy. And if you are an adult that's struggling with any kind of anger issues or addiction, you really do owe it to yourself to get a copy of this book. It's affordable. It is found on Amazon, and it's by J.D. Rutherford. And also, stop by his group, Stand for Something Life, and read what the members are saying, read some of the posts. JD is pretty up on everything that's going on there, and he is available to, consult with if you need to. You can get in touch with him through his page. So, JD, is there anything else you'd like to add before we say goodnight?
Yeah, I would just, for all of you that are on Facebook specifically, Stand for Something Life has a group page, and my main administrator and the whole backbone of the operation is Nancy Molinari. And our group is called, you could type it in the search word, it's called Stand for Something Life. Send me a member request, join in, and become a part of what we're doing. A lot of members on there are all over the place as far as where their heart is in trying to come up with reform and solutions and ideas for how to change the system. For me, it's pushing this cognitive thinking model, and you can learn a lot more about what we're doing, and you could become actively involved, and we're always looking for fresh material and fresh new ideas. Go to search Stand for Something Life group. It's a group, and send me a member request. You'll get approved right away. We don't have questions that we ask. We approve our members and become a part of the Stand for Something Like family, and become involved and get involved in what we're doing, and get this valuable information that's free of charge on our page.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, JD, and I look forward to having you back with us. Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining.
Okay, bye-bye now.
Okay, thank you, JD. That went very well.